What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast. Let me ask you, do you ever feel overwhelmed? Like you've got too much stuff on
Yes.
your plate? Or maybe there are just people that you wish you didn't have to deal with, and yet you do.
Mhm.
Well, you are in luck because today's episode, we're going to be talking about this whole topic actually called Start with No. And it's called that because that's what I thought to call the episode today. But
I
I'm
like
Randy. That's
it.
Danny. What's up, Danny?
Hi, what's up, Randy?
Oh, this is a
Okay.
good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one because, you know, I was last week, I was feeling so peaceful. Like every once in a while, you get to these
Yeah.
moments of peace. And literally within the hour, it was just completely gone. And at first, I found that, my capacity for maintaining peace isn't very strong yet. I'm working on it. But
That's part of it
then,
always.
then I realized I have to really work on saying no. So here's the sitch. Okay.
All right. All right. Go for it.
Somebody reached out to me that I haven't spoken to in 3 or 4 years. Now,
Okay.
3 or 4 years ago, we were like good friends, acquaintances, whatever. And he reached back out to me, said, "Hey, let's catch up." And I said, "Okay, cool, let's catch up." And then he sent me a calendar invite. And that just like all of a sudden turned it from like a friends let's catch up to a business meeting. And like there was
Yeah.
this very severe cognitive dissonance going on in my brain. And so then like the whole so
He scheduled you?
dude, he sent me, I didn't click on it. I just said, "Hey, I'm available at this time." Because like it just all of
Yeah.
a sudden I went from like I said, I was having this moment of like transcendent peace, and then all of a sudden just furious. I couldn't believe it. And so I'm
I
like,
hate those things, man.
dude, and like normally I would have just said no. But I was like, no, he was a friend. We were good acquaintances back 3, 4 years ago. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Got on the phone with him, and it just went downhill from there. And he's, he's accusing me of this, and I'm just like, I don't have time for this. I'm tired. I'm hungry. This is ridiculous. Forget it. We're done. And so that
Fair
brought
enough.
about the topic of today's video, which is start with
Yeah.
no. Had I have just watched this video last week
Gone
when he
through all that
reached out
bull.
and said,
Yeah.
"Can we meet
Done.
up?" I would
Yeah.
have said no.
You
Simple.
also had another opportunity to say no too when you sent the calendar invite. I hate that. I do not like that. I feel like it is. It turns everything into a business thing. Like you're penciled in at this time specifically, and it has to be this time. And I don't think that's a. I think it's a good way to do things. It's fine for
Well,
it's fine for work and for meetings or whatever because you need everybody to be collaborative or whatever. But not for catching up. It seems
dude,
too
exactly,
rigid.
exactly, exactly. I've never before had a friend send me a calendar invite for. I've had people
Yeah,
where I've had people who are friends where we've had trouble scheduling a time to
yeah.
meet up where we exchange calendars just so that we can meet up eventually, but never like, let's catch up here. Like
Here's the date.
either because here's the thing with this calendar invite is like either see how busy and important I am, or two, you're worthless. So fit yourself into my schedule. It just has like the
Yeah.
wrong connotation.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I
So
don't even like,
that being
I
said,
don't like leaving it to other people either to schedule themselves within it because I feel like that's also, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that's besides the point.
yeah,
We can argue
that's a
about
great
calendars
point.
all
So it
day.
sent me off on this whole like I just I went from like transcendent bliss to just absolutely furious. And it took me a few hours to like get back to just kind of normal. And afterwards I saw a few things that I could learn from it because clearly it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah,
I was
naturally.
tired, I was hungry, not the best times to schedule this type of thing. Uh
No.
Also I could have said no, and I didn't. I said yes. And I was scheduling something for when I probably shouldn't have been anyway. So I got a lot of that stuff from it. But I thought that it was imperative that we talk about starting with no, because I think that if I myself grasped this philosophy and if others grasped this philosophy, it could really open up the world to what
Well,
they actually want to do.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's a good starting point in general because I think we get caught up in all these, perceived obligations, perceived sort of, or pressures to do certain things. And, before we know it, our days are kind of filled up by other people's wants their intentions, their motivations, all this crap, that we're doing things that we don't even really necessarily want to do or haven't even asked ourselves if we want to do it. So starting with no, kind of, I was even thinking of it broadly, like clearing that, plate entirely, clearing that foundation down entirely to nothing, and then starting over almost, because it gives you the chance to start saying yes to what you actually want to say yes to.
But like that's a great point, because how many times do you not really, you're not like yes about it, and you don't really want to say no. You're just kind of like, okay, I hope it's not great. But if no is just your blanket answer to everything, and then
Yeah.
when there was something that you really wanted to do, like you really, really want to do it, you could say, screw it, no, I'm going to do this thing. But
Yeah.
your no is just blanket answer for everything.
Well, it's funny too, I think, because there's that, there's also that whole other mentality and a philosophy of saying yes to everything, right? Saying yes to life, saying yes to every opportunity and all, which I get, because there is, like, this is the flip side, right? That there can be some advantage to doing that. You can meet new people, you can, find yourself doing things that you wouldn't have done before, what have you, right? But it's also kind of like that's also kind of like almost like a passive or reactive, or way of engaging with the world, where you're just responding to what's offered and agreeing to it without really maybe thinking it through. So I kind of like this because it's also it's forcing you to kind of take a stand and be more intentional, right? Because you have to then overcome that no to say yes.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that whole thing of saying yes to everything. Like there's that movie, Yes Man. And I think at
Yeah,
times saying yes to everything is awesome. It's kind of like we talked about previously with the explore exploit paradox. Like when you're just getting started, or when you're really bored, or when you have depression, or whatever it is,
yeah,
saying yes to everything is awesome, because all of a sudden you're going to fill up your plate. You don't have time to think about how bored you are or how depressed you are or any of that stuff, because you're going to just be so busy, so much stuff to do. But then once you get to that point, once you figure out what you actually like, what you actually enjoy, you need to say no to pretty much everything so that you can focus on those things that you actually enjoy, that you're working on.
this is the other difficulty that you mentioned too, which I think you're right. That the yes saying is hugely valuable for getting started or for dealing with things, certain kind of like, depression, things like that, because it can get you moving and motivated. But then, yeah, if you just keep saying yes, you'll never really focus. And I think this is the hard thing too that I think everybody struggles with, which is, like, once you find what you want to do, a lot of times it requires saying no to almost everything else. And in some sense can feel isolating, because it's like you're constantly making choices between, do I move forward, or do I spend time with this person, or do I do this, right? Like, it almost always feels like this balancing act or tightrope, where you're trying to get to the end and you want to do it as fast as possible, but other things
Yeah.
happen.
I'm glad you say that, because it is, you do get to the point where it's like you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And once you
No.
decide what you actually want, pretty much everything else you have to say no to. And it reminds me of what you were talking about. I think it was with Aristotle and the Golden Mean or something about that. How, like, basically if we look at values and pretty much anything in life of importance, there's excess and there's deficiency, and really you're
Yeah.
trying to strike the mean between the two. And oftentimes we're not able to do that. Like Les Brown, he said something along the lines of, most of us never realize our greatness because we get sidetracked by secondary activity. And it's
Yeah.
these things that we
Yeah.
didn't say no to that sidetrack us, and all of a sudden we don't see our greatness.
Right. I think it's hard too, right? Because finding that, whether we're talking about the mean for like Aristotle, right, or finding, saying no, and because we're, rejecting things we really don't want to do, and finding what we want to do to say yes to, it's also hard, because there's always that, like, at least for me, I guess it's always like, when it's an important decision, there's always that, like, kind of thought in the background, like, is this really right? Or is this, really what I want? Because, at the end of the day, it could still be wrong. You're always saying no to something. Even when you say yes to something, you're always saying no to something else. And I think we
Mm.
forget that as well, that every yes is also a no, because every time we fill our time, every time we say yes to some activity, we're also saying no to other things that would have been possible right at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then there's the other thing of, like, imagine the person that asked you if they wanted to do this thing, and then you show up and you're not there 100%. How would they feel? They're kind of like, what the heck? Why'd you even say yes if you're not interested in doing this? Like,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we almost
Oh,
owe
so
it
you
to
get
we almost owe it to them to say no. if we're not
Yeah.
100%.
Well, you can tell too, right? You can tell as soon as you meet somebody if they're not like into it or don't feel like doing it. I think that's why it's always funny when people, guilt trip and push people to hang out and stuff. Because it's like maybe they don't have time, maybe they don't really want to, and you're putting them in a position where they're probably going to be there like only 50% because there's other stuff on their mind and stuff, and it's like so it's you're not really present. And I think this gets down to the harder issue too of doing what you actually care about and what you want to do most of or at all times. And that is a hard thing to do. I think we all
Mhm.
struggle with that.
Yeah, because once okay, so here's the other side of
No,
saying no.
go
Once you
ahead.
start saying no a lot, then boredom creeps up.
Ah,
Boredom
yeah.
is like right there because I get there where all of a sudden I get really good at saying no, and I'm only doing the things that I really want to do, and then I get really bored doing them. And it's like enduring through that boredom because that's what champions do. They're just really good at handling boredom and continuing to grind it out. Uh, and really, it's like dealing
Well, it's
effectively with that boredom.
yeah, boredom's tricky because you kind of need it on the one. I mean, you need it to, have new ideas, to have breakthroughs, or even just to get better at things. You need that tedium, that boredom. You need that repetition. But it is like something we are, especially nowadays, trained to run from at all times. Right? We're constantly trying to distract ourselves, to hide from being bored, to escape our boredom, and it's so easy because there's so many ways. I mean, it's not like you have to walk 4 miles to the house down the street to ask someone if they want to hang out. You can just call somebody. It's not the olden days.
Dude, you don't even call people
Yeah.
anymore. You just
Yeah, you
text
just
them.
act, that's true. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm dating myself. Look. Yeah, it's like so you could do actually use a phone as a phone. Like an idiot. You can you can do so many things so easily. I think that's part of it, right? You can always watch something. You always have ways to entertain yourself. So it's almost like there's no motivation to be bored. And I think that's also I don't know. I find a lot of times that boredom's crucial for me to figure out what I'm doing and to actually appreciate my life.
Yeah. So how does someone kind of strike the balance? I mean, I think well,
That is the hard thing.
I think initially you kind of have to ask yourself, do I feel overwhelmed? Am I stressed? If the answer is yes, then you need to just say no to everything.
Yeah.
But if the answer is no, if you feel like depressed or bored or something like that, then you should probably just say yes to everything and then see how it
I
goes.
think I think a good starting point is if you're thinking about this at all, you're probably in a position where you need to probably make some changes anyway. So I think like
Mm,
maybe giving yourself like a weekend of saying no to start out. Like clear your weekend, clear your entire schedule for a weekend. Say no to everything and give yourself time to be with yourself first.
mm.
You know what I
And
mean? Like, yeah,
also give your friends and loved ones a heads up. Like let them
that's
know
a good
you're
idea
doing this.
too.
Because if
Yeah.
you start saying no to everything your wife asks, you're in for some
Yeah.
trouble if you haven't told her. But if you let them know that like you're feeling stressed out, you just need to say no to a bunch of stuff and get to empty the plate. That
Well,
can work out
that's
really
the other
well.
well, that's the other side of it. I think that's important too, is people stress about it. Like as if I say no to this stuff, these people will get mad at me or their obligations, right? But you're right. If you reach out and you tell them why you're saying no, then you're thinking about things, you're trying to figure things out, you really don't feel yourself, you need time to whatever. Anybody that's really your friend or really loves you will totally understand. And they might try to offer help and you'll have to say no to that too, which is how it is. But they'll understand, I think, that you need that time, you know?
So that's a great point. Here's the other thing. When he reached out to me to see, he's like, we should catch up. It didn't even occur to me if I wanted to catch up. Like I haven't thought about him in 3 years, and then he
So probably
reaches out and
not.
says we should catch up. And all of a sudden, I feel like if I don't say yes, that I'm going to offend him and cause this big like drama. And it's just like, yeah, totally not even present in the moment.
I hate that. Isn't it annoying? It's like I feel it all the time too. It's like, people I haven't even talked to for a while, and then it's like try and guilt trip you and stuff and push the stuff on you. It's like, but why am I even engaging? Should I engage? Is it necessary? On
Mm.
what basis is this? I don't know. Why should I value this? That's the other problem.
I've I've developed like PTSD with some messaging apps because those are messaging apps that I used like years ago. And basically anytime somebody reaches out from them, it almost always is bad. So I just need to delete them
You know exactly
and
what's going
start
to
over.
happen.
Start over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem. Well, I think that's part of it too. Is like I think well, I think most of us, right? You know, we know that well, we know the whole like, you know, the midlife crisis and all that stuff, but there is some truth that the existential crisis, right? Crisis of meaning, like a need to sort of start over or to kind of rebuild things when things have kind of because it's easy for our lives, all of us, right? To live a life and all of a sudden it gets kind of off track, or we're not really making choices. We're doing what we think other people want us to do. And all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're not really living a life that's our own or one that we even value. And sometimes in order to sort of correct that and course correct, you need to kind of rebuild that everything. And that is, it's not easy. And you need to really give yourself a lot of time to do that and a time to reflect and time to figure out what you want, which means saying no to everything, literally, and just starting over in a significant kind of real way. Not abandoning everyone by any means, but really giving yourself a chance to sort of rebuild that foundation of what is your life, what matters to you, what do you value, and then going from there. I think
Okay, so
it's
here's another question that I have for you because
okay.
last week you were talking about kind of how the existentialists look at life.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest barriers for me saying no is the fear of missing out. I feel like I'm going to miss out on something if I don't say yes to it. Like I feel there's something that's going to happen and I'm just going to miss out on it. But like you were talking about how the existentialists are like, there's really no just meaning into life whatsoever. So it doesn't matter. And it's just gonna so like
Well,
how do you think
yeah.
what do you think their interpretation of this would be
Well, I
saying
think
no
again,
to everything?
if meaning's all a construct, right, and we have to create the meaning, then I think it just depends on. I mean, I think you theoretically you could miss out if it's something that's really important to you, right? So it's again, it comes back to knowing what really matters to you because that establishes the meaning that's relevant to you for making choices. So it really, I think it comes down to, and this is true for I think the existentialists and a lot of philosophy, which is coming down to what really matters to you, your values, how you see the world, and then using that as the guide to make those decisions. Because you can only miss out if it really is something important to you. You can't miss out if it doesn't matter. And the truth is, I mean, 90% of the time, really, what are you missing out on? Probably nothing. Or probably something you could create the same scenario again in the future, I think. So yeah, I think it just comes down to, knowing yourself, and that's where we struggle. And they realize that too. I mean, I think that's the crisis of meaning. We're because I think for them, we live in a social world, right? We're surrounded by meaning that's not our own all the time. And it's really tempting to sort of just use it because it's available, right? To just adopt the perspectives around us, to adopt the tentative ideas, the values. My family values that. I value that too, right? Oh, that's a tradition we've always done. I do that tradition too. It's super easy to do that. It feels right. You've just, you can validate yourself because other people are doing it. But at the end of the day, you're not really, you know, identifying what really matters to you. And that's the hard part.
Very well said. I like that. Yeah. I like that. And it comes down to just figuring out what works for you because what works for you won't work for other people and vice versa. But when you do what works for you, life is pretty darn awesome.
Yeah. And I think, to that note too, it requires standing on your own, right? Being able to be your own person. And that involves saying no too. So I think actually they would probably be really on board with this whole idea.
Hmm. Definitely. Like I mean, we talk about this all the time. I always talk about how I kind of fulfilled society's desires for my life. I, you
Yeah.
know, went to university and then to a professional degree and got a job doing all this stuff and almost got married and did everything that society and my parents and everything wanted. And everybody was happy except I was miserable.
Yeah.
and
Right.
it took getting to that point where I was just like, okay, enough's enough. And basically flip it on its head.
Yeah. You know what? It's hard too. It's like, I'm sure you experience this too. When we're young, like we don't really know what we want. So we sort of tentative, we trust other people, right? Oh, they've done it. Other people are doing it. It looks probably right. So maybe I should do that. But we haven't learned to really ask those hard questions of ourselves yet. We haven't learned to really ask, like, is this really something I want and really reflect on it, really think about it. And I think for most of us, it's something we'll struggle with our whole lives. And I
Yeah,
think
and
that
even
it doesn't necessarily get easier either. I don't think it does. I think it's something you're constantly, I mean, confronted with all the time, right?
mhm. But even figuring the things that you enjoy doing and just doing them anyways, like for instance, I remember when I was younger, loved playing Dungeons and Dragons, loved reading fantasy books, loved painting little miniatures and stuff like that. And because it wasn't cool, I was like, okay, stop doing that. Have to learn pickup so I can talk with any girl, have to learn how to fix cars, have to lift weights so I could have muscles and everything like that, because that's what the prototypical guy is supposed to be. Okay.
Right.
And then get through life and realize, hey,
Naturally.
it's just doing the fun stuff that I enjoy doing. So now, paint miniatures, read fantasy books, whatever.
Well, that's the other, you point out another good danger, right? Which is like you can even you can even veer yourself off a path that was good for you simply because you think it's not matching that norm or that standard that you think you should be matching, right? And this is the problem of who we compare ourselves to, right? If you're comparing yourself to other people, you're always going to fail because you're using their metric to evaluate yourself. So you need to come up with your own metric, right? And I think that's it's also a challenge, but it's really hard too, especially now, when we're people are constantly on social media and stuff, you're constantly being shown other people's ideas of what's valuable, of what matters. And you can't help but internalize some of it. I think it's very difficult not to.
I think eventually people will get to a point where they just laugh at social media, because at least nowadays it's starting to get kind of humorous, like how many pictures you see
Oh
these
yeah.
people actually taking. Like where I live is very close to some like tour, not tourists, but like some very desirable selfie spots. So I literally see people just taking hundreds of pictures there for hours and hours and hours, and every type of pose, every type of posture. And it's just like out of hundreds of pictures, they get maybe one picture that's like great, and they post that. And that looks good. And everybody thinks their life is awesome because they got that one picture that worked out right. They don't see the hundreds of other pictures that looked terrible.
Wait, you know what I love about that too? Because it's so true. It's like they also don't see the time that it takes to do that. Like if you're taking hundreds of pictures, then you got to actually choose one, which means you got to go through all those hundreds of pictures. Then you got to find filters and edit and all that. So it's like by the time it's all said and done, that probably took, plus getting to wherever the spot is, it probably wasn't right by their house. You're probably talking about 6, 7, 8 hour endeavor to get one picture posted. And which is
Yeah.
fine. If that's your job, that's fine, whatever. But if it's like to try and compete with that though, as a regular person, it makes no sense because, and I think that's part of it is also like when you start to understand your own values, it's seeing that the other things that people value or tell you you should value are false and that they don't
Mhm.
apply to you. I think that is also like, that's what's so empowering about saying no to, is it's like, I don't need to live up to that idea, or I don't need to be valued that way, or that's not valuable to me. It's your ability to say, what matters to you as well.
That's a good point. It's like, what are you giving up your life for? That's
Yeah.
7 hours of your life. You're never getting it back. This is the first time that you're here. This is the first time that now here. And they're both together right now. You got 7 hours. Are you giving it up to get one perfect Instagram picture? Or are you going to actually accomplish some things that you want to do in your life?
Yeah.
Dude, okay, another story. I love telling stories about my life.
Yeah. Stories are great.
Back when I lived in France many years ago, I was only legally allowed to work 14 hours a week as a teacher. So the rest of the time I spent playing World of Warcraft. And
Nice.
so, and so I got really good at the game. I was making a ton of money by like buying and selling on the auction house, and it felt awesome. And but then I got so good at the game, and I was like, why don't I actually, try and do this in real life? And yeah, sure, it took a little bit longer than in the game, but like it's much more rewarding because you're doing it in your real life.
Yeah, rather than just in like a fantasy thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's funny. I was reading something. That's why games are so appealing, right? Because they have that careful structure that rewards us. No challenge is too easy or too hard, right? It's always in that middle area of being like just frustrating enough, but you always overcome it right before it gets like so aggravating that you want to throw it away. And it's
Mhm.
like they're tailored that way to keep appealing to that goal, that positive feeling, that goal sort of driven
A little
behavior.
dopamine drip. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think, it's funny. I think they're great, in a small amount, not too much. Because we can, and that's the danger in life, right? We can kind of commit ourselves to anything 100%, and we can also totally waste time as well. It's only a waste, I guess, if you make it a waste, right? Or if you think
Hmm.
it's a waste.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a
So I
challenge,
think
man.
for me, starting with a blanket statement of no is just going to be good for a while because I gotta, yeah,
I really like the idea actually, because I think it really does. It gives you like a clean slate. That's what I thought of when you said that. I was thinking of like having like, shaking that etch a sketch right to nothing, starting over. Because it really does. It gives you a chance to kind of really reflect on like, is this actually something I want to do? Rather than just kind of, because a lot of times I feel like our decisions are like that. It's like you've already committed to shit a long time ago, or you feel these obligations. It's like a lot of times you don't even feel like you're really there. It's just like you're doing it because you have to. And why do that?
yeah. And besides, like, how much free time do people actually have, anyways? For the most part, it's not that much. And so,
No.
if you keep saying yes to everything, you're going to lose the only time you have to work on what you want.
Yeah, you might also find too that there's actually some things you enjoy doing in your free time that are by yourself solitary, taking walks or just hanging out or painting or doing something like that where it's like just a little creative activity or something that's for yourself, not for anybody else. And that takes time. You can't do any of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
without time. I like that. Yeah. It's funny. I wonder if the pandemic helped people with that. I feel like it did. Honestly, I feel like it did for me. I think, that senseless need of going out for no reason. Like,
Yeah. Dude, I
yeah,
forget what I used to do before
I know.
COVID.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's yeah, not everybody, but like a lot of people are like, you can't do anything anymore. And it's like, I've had the most productive year I've ever had in my entire life. Like
Yeah.
literally, by far, made more money this year than ever before, accomplished more things, got more certifications, read more books, did all types of stuff more than I've done ever in my life. And it's like, I don't even remember what I did before COVID.
Isn't that it's because the government lockdowns and stuff said no for you.
That's
That's
a
really
good
what it
point.
was, right?
Yeah.
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 It was an enforced no rather than a self-motivated no.
Well,
But I
thanks
think
to
that's
the
it, right?
government for that one.
Yeah. One good thing they did. Everything
Mhm.
else bad. But yeah, I think it's finding that. I think it's finding that spot where you can start to say, where you can say no, so you can start to say yes. Maybe that's a good way to look at it too.
That's great. Yeah. And I think when I was thinking about it, I was like, I think it's really important to say no until you have like a really burning desire of a yes.
That works too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
Because then you actually want to do the thing and you'll have the time and availability to do it and you're going to knock it out of the park. But if
Yeah,
you
and you
keep
really
wasting your yeses,
and you've really thought about it too, so you actually know what you're saying yes to. You know what I mean? Like like okay, it's this long of a pride, whatever. Like you're committing to it in full rather than like haphazardly, like kind of doing it. Which I
mhm.
think happens a lot too. I
Yeah,
like it.
I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's like, think about it. Like you say yes to all of these things that are really not that. Like somebody's like, "Can we catch up?" I don't know. Can you do this? I don't know. Can you do this? I don't know. And you just start saying no to all of it until you get the invite. It's like, okay, a bunch of like beautiful girls are having a topless swimming party. They need somebody to put lotion on them. All of a sudden, it's not a no anymore. It's a yes, and you want to do it, and you're going to have a blast.
You have direction again. Yeah.
Mhm. All right. So I think
I
that's
like
a
that.
great place to end it
We're good. Yeah, that's
because
good.
we just lost our two listeners. So
Yeah, nice.
that's all. Yeah. Well, anything else you wanted to add, Danny?
No, I think that's good. I think it's a good starting point. Yeah.
All right, same, same. So thank you guys so much for listening to the Existential Stoic podcast. This is episode 112. Make sure to
113.
like, share 113. Make sure to like,
Yeah.
share, subscribe, click
There
the
you go.
notification bell. We will see you guys next week. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll catch you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.